want to start. I want to just start with another part of the body, and I'm starting with the hip bone because it's the top of it's where the top of the femur arrives, and the top of the femur and the foot work together as a unit. They are the two poles of a unit. So if my foot is correctly placed on the floor, my femur will start to rotate automatically. If the foot is rolling, the femur will be turning in, right? Because, well, I'll tell you because afterwards, but that's just the way it goes. But the femur because it enters here, the coxal bone needs to be correctly placed in the body. And unfortunately, many of us, as I explained, because of not arriving to the evolved position of the pelvis, the coxal bone always stays in this position. If you look at it, you can see that it also is totally three-dimensional. It has a very, very curved surface to it, so that we go from up to in to forward. So you have these three axes going through this bone. And if you look at it here, you see that the thickest part of it is right here, right over the femur. So here you have like a shovel right here. If the weight is, if this is not correctly placed in your body, the weight does not arrive here on the inside of the shovel into the thickest part of the body, of the bone. What happens is that it arrives, if this is tipped here, the weight of your upper body comes down and starts to, and falls right here onto the neck of the femur and becomes fragile. At tipped pelvis here, the weight is going to come down here instead of being held in a shovel. That's why this is formed like a shovel, is to carry weight. It's like a bowl. And that protects the top of the femur, the neck of the femur. You know, I'm sure you've all heard of older people who end up falling and breaking the neck of the femur. This is a really typical injury to older people because so many people go through life with the pelvis not in a correct position, and the weight is constantly falling on the neck of the femur and making it more fragile. So to protect the neck of the femur, this bone is in this position so that the weight falls on the inside and is distributed forward, right? So we start forward motion with that. And you've always also heard me talking a lot about this pubic symphysis. Then you have two of these coxal bones in your body, and in the back you have the sacrum and the coccyx. And the two coxal bones join in the front, right here, the pubic bone, with a cartilage. And both of them are mobile. Because of the cartilage, it permits this mobility, so that when you walk, this is happening all the time. This is going chum, 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 chum. When we're dancing on this, the hip bone is as our standing leg comes into this position, into an outer spiral, so that the pelvis is held in a stable position to support weight, so that the whole leg from the bottom up can be used as a stability. If on this side, on the working leg side, well, this is the wrong side, this is the right side, but on the working leg side, the hip bone comes into an inner spiral and permits mobility of the femur because it's in an inner spiral. I'll show you here. Here's outer spiral, here's inner spiral, and this permits a lot of movement here. So this myth in dance that the hips have to be totally square when you lift a leg, I don't agree with it. If you are on one leg, you are already in an outer spiral, inner spiral. And this, bringing this bone into an inner spiral, allows the femur a larger range of movement. If it's down here, it's not going to be able to move as clearly, because if I'm in this outer spiral here and I try to move here, I have bone against bone. Eh? Whereas if I come into an inner spiral, this mobility is allowed. Yeah? So the bone doesn't arrive on bone. So yesterday we were talking a lot about how in the fourth position with Zoe, how the feeling of the symphysis going forward opens, lifts this, the top of the hip bone, the ilium here, lifts it and opens it so that the leg has a stability to it. So when you come out of a plie, if this is happening, there's no stability here because the muscles aren't working with each other in an erect principle. What they're doing is that they're becoming a spiral principle, and that allows movement. So I need to bring this into an outer spiral here, so that here I have a stability happening. To the back of our leg, we have the outer rotating muscles that attach on the inside of the femur here, the large trochanter, and they come around. They come around and attach to the sacrum, up here and down here. And they're very spread out here, but they all come to one point here. And when they contract, they start to rotate the femur here. If my pelvis is tipped in this position, they can't contract because they're not receiving the right information. If I'm like this, these can't contract because they're not receiving a stimulation. I need to be lifting here, and that already starts the contraction. And the way I lift is by bringing this part of the coxal bone towards the center of my body. And as I do this, look what happens. Look here. As I bring this to the center, this opens out. It lifts and it opens out. This is your sit bone here. And we have, from one side of the sit bone to the other, we have the pelvic floor, part of the pelvic floor. And we start by contracting part of the pelvic floor, and that moves the sit bone towards the center of our body. And by moving, because it's three-dimensional, as it moves towards the center of the body, it also goes forward, which opens here, which allows the movement of rotation here and in here. Yeah? Do you understand that? So we're going to be working a lot on that. When I say symphysis forward, for me, this is the same feeling. I could speak about the symphysis, I could speak about the sit bone towards the middle of the body, I could speak about this lifting, it's all the same. My image for myself of the symphysis coming forward helps me personally, but it might be a better image for you to think lift the iliac crest here, or approach the sit bones towards each other. So let's go back to the bar now, or let's get to the bar finally.